Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in this morning. My name is Eric Jump. I am the dealer representative for the Paperweight Collectors Association, and I'm joined today by Diane Warning, who's the secretary, and our panel of artists. We have today Victor Trabuco, Gordon Smith, Mikhail Hingott, Ted Trauer, Alison Ruzsa, Damon MacNaught. So for today, again, I just want to say thank you to all of you for joining us, no matter where you are, whether it be morning, evening, or nighttime. And it's a pleasure to be here today. And I want to thank the Paperweight Collectors Association for everything that they do for the art, and for the artists for joining us. As we proceed on through today's presentation, I want you to think of the artist as our guest experts in the art. So as we look at the contemporary showcase, be looking and thinking about what kind of questions you might have, or what kind of comments you might want to add, and we'll go through at the end and have a question and answer type panel where we can learn a little bit more about each artist, and we can ask them any kind of questions that we might have. Today we have a great variety of artists, new, old, Millefiore, Flamework, all types of different styles are being represented with our artist panel today. And as we proceed through today, any questions that you might have, I want you to add to the chat section, which is located in the lower toolbar of the Zoom meeting screen. And if you have a question, please make it easy for us and go ahead and type question prior to asking the actual question. And that'll make it easy for Diane, who will be fielding those questions later on. And without further ado, let's jump into a word from Gordon Park, our president, and we'll go ahead and take a look at this year's contemporary showcase.
Hello, welcome to this presentation by the Paperweight Collectors Association. I'm Gordon Park, president of PCA. Our moderator today is Eric Jump, who is also a board member, and he is our dealer representative. He has been very helpful in putting this presentation together, assisted by our secretary, Diane Warning. I hope that we have some people here that are not PCA members. Therefore, I want to give a few comments about PCA. PCA is a nonprofit organization founded in 1953 and has members throughout the world. Our purpose is to educate our members and the general public about glass paperweights and related objects. We also promote research in the area of paperweight making and the knowledge of paperweights. An important activity of ours is the publication of an annual collection of articles, photographs, documentation on antique and contemporary paperweights and related objects. This is called the Annual Bulletin and is about 120 pages long. One part of the bulletin is the Contemporary Showcase, which shows examples of the exciting work of our great artists. Today, we will be presenting this year's showcase, which includes 25 examples of the work from our artists. This will be published later this month in the Annual Bulletin, which probably should be sent to our members later this month. John Hawley, who is on our board, is our publication director, and he heads up the effort to put together this bulletin. This is an important milestone for John, since this year marks the 25th annual bulletin that he has put together. He's assisted by others on his review committee. This year, Andy Dohan, Boyd England, and Gay Taylor are on this committee, and they've been working many years in this project. We also produce a quarterly newsletter, which contains lots of good information. We have a website, which was recently redesigned, and we're still adding material to it. This website can be seen at paperweight.org. There's some material on this that's restricted to PCA members and others available to anyone. We hold a convention every 2 years. This is a great opportunity to interact with artists and others that are interested in paperweights. There are lectures and also the opportunity to purchase paperweights. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to skip this year's convention. We have started working on and are hopeful we will have a convention next year. We are also working on virtual events. This is the first, and hopefully we'll have more of them. Museums and other glass organizations have also been holding great virtual events. I know you're here to see some great paperweights, so I will quit talking and turn this over to John Hawley, who will be discussing this year's Contemporary Showcase. Thank you very much.
Welcome to Contemporary Showcase 2021, presented by the Paperweight Collectors Association. I'm John Hawley, editor of the PCA Bulletin. For 25 years, the Contemporary Showcase has been a popular feature in the Bulletin. It shows the latest work by today's paperweight artists, and this presentation is a sneak preview of that feature for 2021. "25 artists from around the world, presented here in alphabetical order, contributed to the 2021 Contemporary Showcase. Of this group, 18 are located in the United States and 7 have their studios in other countries. As you will see, the variety and artistry of this collection of glass paperweights produced by this group is truly astounding. Let's start off with Melissa Ayotte. Her studio is in New Hampshire. Her piece is called Terrestrial and is 7 inches tall. 2 lavender chicories hover atop what appears to be the earth. With this piece, Melissa attempts to express something about the smallest, most fragile and delicate beauty coming from such an amazing and large planet. When placed on the light base, the earth turns into something even more elemental, making the hard matter of ground appear near liquid. This marks a whole new exploration of the elements for Melissa. Stefan Brock works in Germany. The title of his paperweight is Trabuco and Damon and is 3.5 inches in diameter. Here, the artist imagines these delicate pink flowers as a group of young ladies showing off their spring dresses. You can read more about his work in the 2021 PCA Bulletin. Jim Brown's studio is in Tennessee. Jim Brown is a master of millefiori. His piece, Blue Floral Carpet Ground, is 3 3/8 inches in diameter. Carpet grounds have always been one of his favorite styles. This one brings new life to a classic design. He thinks the white ground serves to frame the flower well. Christina Callahan is a new artist to many. She lives in Alberta, Canada. The design of her paperweight, entitled Julia, was an exploration into manipulating portrait murine into a 3-dimensional image instead of the typical 2-dimensional portrait. At 2.4 inches in diameter, it is a relatively small piece, but filled with detail. John Deacon's studio is in Perthshire, Scotland, and he works there with his son, Craig. This pédouche, or pedestal weight, is a modern interpretation of a classical period design. It is 3 7/8 inches high. And this matches anything that the factories could produce during the classic period. Beautiful weight. Rebel hair and Sioux Fox from the state of Colorado. This collaborative weight is called Pattern Millefiori on red ground. It's 2 7/8 inches in diameter. The stylized flower made from Millefiori canes adds a special touch to this beautiful classic Millefiori design. The world of paperweights mourned the loss of Sioux Fox last year, and this paperweight is a fitting tribute to her memory. Wesley Fleming's studio is in Massachusetts. This piece, Pink Lady Slipper, was inspired by the elusive native orchid which grows in the woods around his house. He loves seeking them out every spring and watching them progress through the stage of bloom and decay. And here he's added a winged insect ready to have a feast. This great example of lamp working is 4 inches wide. It reminds one of the glass flowers at the Harvard exhibit. David Graeber's studio is in New Jersey. There's an interesting story behind this weight. Roses are synonymous with Cyprus, the 3rd largest island in the Mediterranean Sea. Memories of this lovely island remind a new friend of Dave's, and a beginning paperweight collector, by the way, of her island childhood, her beloved father, and the glorious roses, especially yellow roses, that grow on the island. She shared those memories with Dave when they met in September 2018. And asked if he would create a paperweight for her that would capture the essence of these memories. Based on her design and color suggestions, he created Island Rose, which is 3.5 inches in diameter. Mikhail Hingott is the sole glassworker on Reunion Island, which is in the Indian Ocean in East Africa. He has been recently working on old techniques of fusing and inclusions. 19th century Russian plaques have been his inspiration for this new work named Floral Bouquet Paperweight Plaque, which is 4.5 inches high. It is a unique piece combining techniques of fusing, inclusions, and glass casting. Mike Hunter comes to us from Selkirk, Scotland. His 3-inch diameter weight, named Love, represents togetherness. Concentric rings of complex canes embrace a large pixelated Mirini cane featuring a pair of lovebirds, depicting togetherness in love. You can read about Mike's work with Mirini cane in this year's PCA Bulletin. Richard Lissel is a French glassworker. His inspiration comes from his daily walks with his dog Texas and from collector friends. His intent is to bring the beauties of nature inside our homes. He's becoming known for his beautiful butterflies within his weights, and this one, Summer Garden, contains a great example. This weight is 3 inches in diameter. George Machart works in Illinois. This paperweight, called Luster Fantasy Flower Chain, is 2 3/4 inches in diameter. It has an Art Nouveau feel. He pulls an iridescent glass cane to make the Luster Fantasy flower. He enjoys not only the surface decoration for a tactile feel, but also likes creating encased paperweights. The challenge for this one was controlling the atmosphere and the reheat to obtain just the right amount of shine for the luster. Damon MacNaught studio is in Tennessee. Like so many paperweight artists, Damon MacNaught looks to nature for ideas. Here, with this weight that he calls Magnum Millefiori Concentric, the design features dogwood canes of various colors and proportion. These were inspired by the dogwood ringing in the orchard outside his studio. At 3 7/8 inches in diameter, is truly a magnum paperweight. You can read more about Damon's work in this year's PCA Bulletin. Peter Reyes' studio is down under in New Zealand. This paperweight is a low dome example from his Pacific Collection series and is 3.5 inches in diameter. In recent years, he has been more interested in putting complex and compound canes into his designs to add more detail to a composition. They have worked really well in the Pacific Collection weights and allow a much deeper sense of discovery when one looks at the piece. He hopes that people who appreciate the series also care about a marine environment. Kathy Richardson's studio is in Minnesota. She made this weight engraved American Lotus in late August. Starting in late July and going through much of August, the American Lotus plants bloom in the East Lake in Winona, the town where she lives. The beautiful yellow flowers of this plant inspired her to make them in glass. And in this 3.25 inch diameter weight, they are not only present as lampwork plants, but also as engraved images in the background. Read more about her engraving work in the 2021 PCA Bulletin. Ken Rosenfeld works and lives in Oregon. A friend suggested the idea of a seahorse paperweight to him. He thought that it was a great idea and started researching seahorses and experimenting with the design, which resulted in this piece titled Seahorse with Visiting Jellyfish. It's a nice size at 3.25 inch diameter. The jellyfish add to the overall aquatic theme, and he thinks they are a nice complement to the design. He plans to pursue other ocean themes as he feels they seem to be a natural fit for the paperweight art form. Alison Ruzsa's studio is in Brooklyn, New York. This paperweight, Redwood Forest, is 7 inches high. She made it for two friends to remind them of their favorite place in the California redwoods. In fact, this couple can be seen walking amidst the magnificent trees in the foreground. Read about her new collaboration with Kathy Richardson in the new PCA Bulletin. Chris Sherman's studio is in Vermont. This piece, multi-layer blossom orb, is 3 3/8 inches in diameter. It was one of his first prototypes in exploring the new to him technique of creating depth and a 3D effect within an otherwise flat two-dimensional process that he was used to. As you can see, he succeeded quite well. Clinton Smith lives and works in Massachusetts. His family loves puppets in general, as well as being big Jim Henson fans. He feels it is an amazing art form that is multi-generational. He made this 3¼ inch diameter weight, titled Ernie and Bert Celebrating 50 Years of Sesame Street, for his wife, Katie. Gordon Smith's studio is in Arizona. His piece is titled Corn Snake with Succulent Plants and is 3¾ inches in diameter. The corn snake was the main focus for him. He had known of this particular type of snake, but had never before created one. The deep, rich red and chalky off-white colors were the main challenges. He used some of the same techniques to create the colors he wanted for this corn snake that he uses to create some of his succulent plants. Paul Stankard's studio is in New Jersey. His paperweight is called Paphiopedilum Orchids with Flowers and Figures, and is 4½ inches high. This piece brings together tropical orchids and native field flowers in a very colorful way. He states that it's interesting how at this stage in the game, the process teaches him new ways to be creative. Victor Trabuco's studio is in New York, up near Buffalo. He came up with this design in the late 70s. He wanted to show the lampwork design in a different form. This example, Nature in Ice Bouquet, is 4½ inches high. It showcases 2 purple blossoms, buds, and white knotweeds. Its 30 facets create interesting effects of the interior. Ted Trauer, another new paperweight artist to many, lives and works in Michigan. This paperweight, 3-flower weight, is 2¾ inches in diameter and represents the progress he has made since attending the PCA convention in Dearborn. There he was able to speak with the other makers and obtain some guidance in his procedures as well as a critique of his skills. Mikhail Ward's studio is in California. His entry in the showcase, Batuto Bouquet, is 2¼ inches in diameter. He thinks the colors really played well together on this one. The 2-sided design also allowed him to add more and different elements for such a small piece. He loves the look of Batuto, but is definitely not fond of getting it there, as it's far too much cutting and polishing. We hope you enjoyed this sneak preview of Contemporary Showcase 2021. Our thanks go out to the 25 contributing artists who made this presentation possible.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Gordon, for putting that together for us. And there was a lot of beautiful work there, and it's always such a pleasure to see what the artists have come up with for the year. You know, the paperweight. The art of the paperweight has been around since around about 1840s in Europe, and it's just fascinating to see what our modern contemporary paperweight artists are able to do. And every time I look at these modern works, I think about if you were able to, you know, go back in time and show the artists, working in 1840, what is possible and what we've done with the art today, I'm sure that their mind would just be blown. It would just be an amazing experience for them to see what you guys are actually capable of doing. With that, I would like to jump in and kind of go through and talk with each one of you guys and learn a little bit more about you and kind of open it up to our viewers here and have them, if any questions have come up, not only about your work in particular, but about paperweights in general, or if they were looking at something, some other person's work there, if they have questions about that. I mean, you are the ones who are going to be able to answer those questions most for the best. So I'd like to jump in and we'll probably start with how about Gordon? I think Gordon is a good start there. And then, as we're thinking again, for our audience, please, if you have any questions, be sure to use that chat function down at the bottom of your screen there. Or if you have comments, or if anything struck you as interesting, you can go ahead and add that in the comment section there. Do us a favor again, though, and put the question at the beginning of your question. That way we can see it a little bit better there. With that, I introduce Gordon Smith. Gordon, do you mind telling us a little bit about you, your history, how you got started, and the types of work that you do?
Sure. Thanks. Hello, everybody. Happy Saturday. Thanks for asking me to participate, Eric. Great little event, great start. So thank you very much for that. Briefly, my life in glass started in the middle 70s. I was living with my family in southern New Jersey, and it was one of those moments where I was a middle-aged teenager and walked into a shopping mall with my family at Christmas time and saw one of the flame workers, a guy named Michael Dorfy, actually is his name, doing little flame work figurines at a kiosk in the middle of a shopping mall. For those of you that remember shopping malls. And it kind of changed my life. It was one of those moments where I just thought, wow, this is really cool. And my dad, being a dentist, had some background of what scientific glass blowing was, which I knew nothing about, and told me about that and said, would you like to see that? So he made arrangements for me to see scientific glass blowing. And I was still in high school. We took a day off of school and went to what turned out to be the only place in the world that taught laboratory glass blowing. And it was only about 40 minutes from our home in South Jersey, Salem Community College. And we walked in the room and I had an immediate aha moment. I looked at what was going on by these students, and there was a lot of glass apparatus hanging on the walls. And I just thought, this is what I want to do. And it kind of came out of nowhere. And I carried that thought right through high school, wound up going to Salem Community College, learning how to do laboratory glass blowing. I worked in that field for a few years. My first job was in Vineland, New Jersey, briefly. Then I went to work for a company in Boston and was there for about a year and a half, and found myself back in South Jersey at the Contis Glass Company, owned by Jim Nantis and Bill Contis, who, for those of you that do know paperweights pretty well, they were, although their business and their life was owning a scientific glass blowing company, they also, as a hobby, made paperweights. And so I saw their paperweights one day, and that was the second aha moment for me. And from that, I wanted to pursue paperweight making, and they connected me to Wheaton Village, which was in South Jersey, about 10 minutes from where the Contis Glass Company was. And I went there, and they welcomed me with open arms to come in and learn some paperweight making techniques. And so I did that and experimented in the meantime in my parents' basement where I was living at the time, doing flame working and just teaching myself how to make little flame work and lamp work designs. I'm pretty much self-taught. although I've had a lot of great influences and support from people like the Contis brothers and Ray and Bob Banford and Ruth Banford. They were extremely helpful and very warm and welcoming to me. No one ever actually sat and showed me how to make anything. But without that support, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. But that was pretty much how it all started. In 1982, I was introduced as the newest paperweight maker at a Wheaton convention in South Jersey. And it kind of went from there. I kept my full-time job for a few years and then slowly transitioned to paperweights full-time. And I found myself enjoying realistic designs more than stylized designs, although I do both. And I combine a little bit of everything in my work today. It started with a lot of influence from the Banfords, the Tarsitanos, and Paul Stankard. I also enjoyed the work of William Manson. I thought William Manson's work was pretty cool, stylized, but something I enjoyed. It was very different than what most people were doing. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of pursue that myself. So I started with flowers because I think I thought they were a good place to start. And then eventually branched out into marine life motifs, and then a lot of very environmental, earthy forms, and then lizards and snakes and salamanders and that sort of thing. But that's pretty much how it all started. I was a scientific glass blower and then made that transition.
Great. You say that you're a flamework artist. Could you just describe really quick? We have a few different flamework artists here on board. Could you just describe a little bit about what flameworking is and what that entails?
Yeah. Flameworking, it's the newest term, or the latest term for what was always referred to as lamp working. And lamp working, flame working, you may hear both. They're the same thing. And what that basically is where you sit at a bench and you have a torch in front of you and you work with a torch that's got the ability to give you a very small little needle nose flame for sculpting intricate designs, to a very big, large flame for actually making a paperweight over a torch versus having a hot tank of glass.
Right.
What we refer to as a tank-made paperweight. So that's basically what flame working is. Flame working and lamp working, that basically means you're working at a bench torch.
Thanks. Thank you, Gordon. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Allison, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Alison Ruzsa? What kind of work do you do? How did you get started? When did you start? Where and when do you work?
Well, I have to say, I loved Gordon's story. I'd never heard that from him before, because I also saw the guy at the mall and told my father, oh my God, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. This is it. I've got it all figured out. And he went on to explain world economics and told me that I would never be able to do that and make a living. And, you know, I did listen to him for several years. I went to horticulture college, and then I wound up in art school. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. But somewhere in my senior year of fine arts college, I discovered a little glass blowing studio. And it was right back on. The minute I went in there, my brother told me, oh, you should go see this demonstration. You'll love it. And I stopped by in the middle of, I used to be a singing telegram. So I stopped by between 2 telegrams at this little glass shop to watch the demonstration, and said, oh my goodness, I'll be back. And yeah, I never really stopped from there. And when my first teacher asked me what I wanted to do, I showed her a picture of Paul Stankard's work. And of course she said, we don't have any of that equipment here, and you can't start with anything that complicated. But as time went on, I learned how that all worked. And I also still never had the equipment. I moved to New York City to work at the New York Experimental Glass Workshop, which is now Urban Glass, where I met all kinds of really famous and impressive artists. Like my first day at work, Dale Julie was in the studio. So I had influence from a lot of people, but I always still wanted to put the images in there, but I found a different way. I ended up taking a class about Paradise paints, which is a kind of enamel that unfortunately is no longer produced. So in any case, I learned how to do this technique where I actually paint my images. So I have a really long time to work on them. And then I can encase them in glass, the furnace glass that Gordon was talking about. I have a big pot of hot glass that I dip into to get my clear glass. And then I can paint on it again and again and again. And for many years, I made very large pieces that were, 10 inches in diameter, like bigger than a bowling ball, that had many, many layers. And it was a lot of work and a lot of, a risk is the word I'm looking for. But I somehow or other got the attention of paperweight collectors. They wanted to see them smaller. So I started making them smaller. And I actually really liked that format. And I liked going back to that first day at the mall where I saw the guy lamp working. And I went into the Pier 1 gift shop and bought a little paperweight for $1. I still have it. It's about 5 feet away from me right now. And so, it's kind of like Gordon said, it's nice when you're young and you think of something you want to do and somehow or other life lets you do it.
Yeah, that's neat. That's great. Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. Let's see. Let's go with let's hear from Mikhail. Now Mikhail's it's late for him. He's actually on the island of Reunion. And he was well, I'll give it to Mikhail. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and what you do and your history, Mikhail? And I'm really happy that you're here today.
Yes, thank you so much for everybody for add me in the discussion. I start to blow glass at 17 years old in the middle of France in the school to learn traditional glass blowing. But this school is in partnership with Saint Louis Crystallery. As you know, and I finished work in Crystallery de Saint Louis company, and I learned all the technique between 2000 and 2005 in Saint Louis Crystallery. I start in the standard production, like to blow glass, carafe, or just vase. And my dream is to add the Paperweight place. And all the day I finish my work and I go to see all the Paperweight maker just to see 1 hour or 2 hours to know the technique, to use the color, different marine and filigrane, and it's really impressed me. And I decided to ask the boss to integrate this place. And in 2001, I integrate the Paperweight place, and I start to learn the Paperweight technique. But I just make all the decor and the marine filigrane for possible, Xavier Zimmerman, my chef in Crystallery. And I make just only all the marine and the filigrane for 4 years approximately. And after that, I want to learn torch technique, but it's complicated. But when you are in this company, you stay at the same place for a long time. And it's really complicated to add another place to learn another technique. So I decided to take to Saint Louis learn alone the torch technique. So I met some scientific glass blower to learn me the first approach technique with the torch, but it's with borosilicate. It's complicated to work borosilicate and after to work soft glass. So I asked Richard Lissel to help me. He helped me a lot to find some color, to find some tool, because I need to buy all my equipment to restart to make Paperweight. And I just restart to make Paperweight in 2016. Just I start to make my first piece, and it's a really, really big pleasure to finally make my own piece with my own signature. And after that, I talked to you about my geolocalization in Réunion. It's not how to say in English. It's the state who want to develop the glass art technique in the highland. So, but here we have absolutely nothing about glass technique, about glass working, about glass worker, absolutely nothing. And the state asked me to build a first school of torch technique, to learn torch technique, just to popularize, to make a more developed art technique on the island. And after this 8 months of formation to learn some different people, I decided to stay here, to make my own factory, but to blow glass. And now it's 10 years to be here in Réunion. And I developed all the glass technique when you see about Paperweight, blowing. I continue to blow borosilicate because I'm alone in the island and I need to make everything for all the how do you say, client? I don't know in English, customer, yes, no, yeah, and so I need to continue to work with borosilicate, with soft glass, to blow with a big kiln just behind me. We have my blow glass and fused glass, cast glass. I make all techniques, but my pleasure, it's my preference, it's really to work Paperweight. I want to make that all the day and all the time, but it's at this time it's complicated for me. So hope in the future, but I want to develop a different technique because I love to learn history about Paperweight. And so you can say in the video about the Russian plaque. So I have one to show you here, just small, and it's a really different technique. We work with casting and glass pot to melt in the mold. So I make all my flower with torch, with soft glass, but I need to make really thin flowers, because when I encase it, I can use a vacuum system, because I use different square mold, and I cast glass with pot like this to melt in the mold, and it's complicated to stabilize with no bubble. So it's for that we have a really thin flower in the piece, and it's a technique we make approximately 1 year to control and to make correctly, I think. And I work for another technique, always on the plaque. It's the engraving, enamel, and gold encasing in glass. I made a special collection, private collection. So next time I will proceed to post some photo about this work, because I have no piece here to show you. That's the same work, but I work like Alison with emile, with an emile and paint, but I engrave the piece before and take full the engrave with emile and paint just before to go to the kiln. It's near thermoformage, fusing, casting. It's between all the techniques, and I use the different tape to encase gold and silver, or different powders or metal powder. So I have a good finish on the result, and it's work. I love to work for all the confinement, for as you say in English, for the pandemic. When I stay in my studio, I normally work and learn about this technique now, and perhaps sometime make another technique. But at this time, I want to perform in this form of piece. So,
right. Thank you, Mikhail. Do you mind holding up that piece that you have there, that round piece? Just hold it close to the camera for us so we could take a look.
Yes, sure. A pleasure. Yes.
Thank you. Interesting. So most Flamework paperweights, for those of us who may not know, they're encapsulated in clear crystal using a vacuum system, which helps to escape the bubbles and to fully encapsulate the sculpture and get into all the nooks and crannies. Now, from what I'm understanding, you're using kind of like a pour over technique to do these plaques. Is that what you're saying, Mikhail?
I use different techniques. So one with this spot to directly cool down the hot glass in the mold, just to encase the flower, but that made just the middle of the piece. Next time I need to make the bottom, and after I re-put in the kiln to melt and weld the two parts in one, and I just use this moment to add a lift gold or lift silver between, or powder silver, just before welding the two pieces. It's a little bit different like paperweights, because when you make paperweights with blowpipe, you make in just all the piece in one time. But at this time, I can make a lot of just first piece and make just a lot of bottom, and after choice what butter I can use for what color and of flower. And it's interesting. It's a really interesting work.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Mikhail. I appreciate it.
With pleasure. Yes.
So so far we've had flamework, we've had enamel, and then Mikhail is using a combination of different types of techniques here. Why don't we go with Damon? And Damon MacNaught, why don't you take over and tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got started?
I do Millefiori paperweights. I've been involved with glass, I think, about 25 years now, and I started with blown glass furnace work. And about 10 years ago, started pursuing Millefiori. What brought me to Millefiori was Jim Brown, another paperweight maker. I had the opportunity to meet Jim at the Appalachian Center for Crafts. I was a resident artist there for a couple of years, and Jim came out of nowhere and had such a passion for Millefiori paperweights. I think it certainly struck a chord with me, that his focus. And Jim and I became friends. And it would be another 10 years before I actually got together with Jim and tried to make paperweights. But Jim had always encouraged me to give it a try, and I'm glad he continued to encourage me to work in paperweights, because they are an awful lot of fun to make and offer endless design possibilities. And so I feel like I've come a long way with Millefiori, but there's still a lot to say and still a long way to go. So I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
you mind just giving us kind of a brief overview of what Millefiore is and how it's made?
Well, Millefiore is furnace worked. It doesn't have to be, but the designs are built up in layers of color and clear glass drawn from the furnace, and then they're stamped in molds and then extruded across the studio to create the cane. As the cane is cut up, we're looking for the cross-section design. And then those cross sections, about a little less than a quarter inch, are arranged within a steel mold, heated back up, and then picked up with more hot glass, shaped, and then encased in crystal.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, Damon.
Pleasure.
Ted Trauer, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? You're relatively new, and I am so thrilled to have you as kind of like as you know, the champion of the new artists coming on board. I think that I think probably any kind of art is probably kind of daunting to start out, and it's nice to have you on board. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and how you got started, and the type of work that you do?
It is a little daunting. It's almost embarrassing to be on the panel with the other names here. They possess skills so far beyond anything that I ever hoped to have time to develop. I'm another guy who stood in the wall and watched them do the lace sculptures on the torch. Mom had to drag me away. Just fascinated by the flame. Attended the University of Kansas, where they also had a hot shop, and I could never work up the courage to just walk in and make myself comfortable, but if I had, I suspect my life would be a bit more like Gordon's than it has been, because I know I never would have left again. However, as it was, I went to school and learned how to make artificial limbs and braces, orthotics and prosthetics. And that was my profession until I retired here about 3 years ago. And somewhere 30, 20, 25 years ago, my wife gave me some classes at the Center for Creative Studies in Detroit in glassblowing at the furnace. And that was an expensive mistake on her part. I have continued to spend money and time on glass ever since then. Today's world is a little different than when some of these other folks were starting out and you had to really scramble for information. There's a lot of stuff on the internet. I have a very large collection of books on paperweights, and I've read just about every one of them. I've also taken classes at Corning, at the studio at Corning, under Victor, for one, very generous teacher, and Debbie Tarsitano. And I had the good fortune to take a weekend workshop under Paul Stankard when the PCA meeting was in Toledo. And I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan, which made both Toledo and Dearborn very convenient for me. I went to the Dearborn meeting because I was getting close, and I knew there were some technical issues with what I was doing, making my weights, and I was very fortunate with the artists there who were generous with their knowledge and could just take one look at my weight and say, well, you need to do this. And for one thing, I was picking up my setups too cold, and there would be clusters of bubbles on the surface of the flowers. And that was quite apparent to them and something I had no clue of. So I've made some adjustments. Also, Clinton Smith clued me in on the glass that he and Richard Lissel are using, which is a optical crystal from the Czech Republic. And I do work in the 96 expansion glasses, which are the glasses that are used for furnace workers. And there's a very nice color palette of glasses available in that area. But with their help and guidance, I feel like I've made a lot of progress. The quality of my work's improved a good deal. My designs are still very simple. And as Gordon says, flowers are a good place to start. The sculptural forms that I see folks make, I find very intimidating. When I attempt to make those, they have, shall we say, some unique appearances as to the, compared to the design I had in mind. But I am a collector of paperweights. On our 5th anniversary, I bought my wife a paperweight for the anniversary, which is a perfect example of buying somebody the thing you want. And I have pretty fair collection of both antique and contemporary weights. Of course, you always need more, right?
Right. Hey, you got her flowers, right? I mean,
I got, actually, it was a mountain with birds from Corey art glass that I got that particular occasion, but it's, I still see one on eBay every now and then. That's not necessarily one that draws all the bids.
So how long would you say you've been working or making paperweights?
I've been working with glass itself, hot glass from the furnace for 25 years. The paperweights, I really got serious. I set up a little lamp working station in my garage and kind of taught myself lamp working based on what I knew from working out of the furnace. And I've probably been going at that for a little over 10 years now, but much more seriously here in the last 4 or 5 years as I approached retirement. But there's still a lot for me to learn.
Excellent. Do you have any of your work handy? You can hold up to the camera.
Got a couple things here. I just started trying to play with making dahlias. I've got a ways to go with those yet.
Ooh, that's great.
But you use a lot of flower petals on one of those. But most of my work has been in this vein with a frit ground and, you know, flowers. Sometimes I'll do 3 matching flowers and sometimes I'll do 3 dissimilar ones. It just kind of depends on what I'm feeling like at the moment there. But yeah, it's just an all-consuming thing. You get out there and you've got that glass in your hands and you just don't think about anything else. And that's a wonderful relief from the stresses of the world.
So you say you're using I believe it's the Preciosa from the Czech Republic. What are you using for color?
All my color is 96 glass. I use a lot of Gaffer glass, a little bit of Reichenbach. Especially for the white. For some reason, all the other companies, the Gaffer glass and the others that I've tried all turn black in the torch, but the Reichenbach does not have the tendency to go black nearly so much. And so I've really, really taken to that and started expanding into some of their other colors, given my good experience with that one.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate your insight there, and your don't you know, you're valuable here. I appreciate. I'm
not going to
quit. Thank you, Victor Trabuco. You don't. I mean, it's all you, man. Let's hear from you. Why don't you tell us what you do, how you do it. Tell us all your secrets, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, my name is Victor Trabuco, and I've been making glass for 47 years. I started out pretty much similar to what Gordon experienced, and I went to the mall and I saw this guy making some glass. My wife wanted one of the pieces, and I said, I think I could make that. So I went home and I broke up pop bottles and started stretching out glass at a torch. And then I would go back to the mall and watch this guy work, but he started to notice me because I had sunglasses on, and every time he saw me, he turned the torch off. And so I wasn't going to get anywhere there, but there was another mall. It was at a Christmas time, and this fellow's name was Alan Verrier. He just passed away a few months ago. But he was generous enough to tell me where I can get the right kind of glasses, a torch. I bought a Bethlehem torch. And this book actually showed some work at Hampshire. I think most of the guys have heard of it. And I studied some of that. So I just got a pretty much self-taught. I mean, he made one little piece for me, but that's all I ever saw anybody do. And the rest has been pretty much self-taught over the years. I really enjoyed doing the lampwork floral pieces. But there's a lot of parts of glass that interest me too. I got a lot into cold working. Some of the things I actually invented, I went to Corning Glass and I was this technical advisor for 3 years and I actually set up their whole cold shop. 60% of their production went through these machines that I built. And it changed the way that they had worked there. And so I was really proud of that fact. And so over the years, there's a lot of different things, not just the lamp working. I'm starting to do some casting of glass. So all these different things have really interested me because glass is just, you're never done learning. There's always so much to learn. Mm-hmm. And I'm just as excited today as I was when I first started working on all these processes. Lately, I've been working on the Blausa style flowers, and I think I've actually solved some of those problems too. So that's what I find most interesting is just solving problems. I spent over 30 some years really focused on paperweights. So that's always been my main focus and it still is, but I still enjoy some of the other parts of glass. And now that I'm 72 years old, I'm actually starting to give back. I've always been very secretive, as most of the guys that know me know that to be true. But I've enjoyed teaching at Corning. You find young men like Damon was there, and Ted was a real gentleman. We really enjoyed him in the class, and so we've had some of the artists take the class, and I've enjoyed having them there.
Yeah, I think that we've had a few. I think a fair number of our artists that are registered with the PCA have taken your classes through Corning, and it's really important. You know, it's really important for you guys that have been around and done it. Pass the torch, and we really appreciate that. Are you teaching anything this coming up this year, or are they?
Yeah, 2022 in January, I'll be there.
Okay, lamp working or?
Yeah, the same thing, the paperweight. What we usually do is during the class, they get about a chance about 10 or 12 times to actually encase small paperweights. So you can actually go over the process over and over again to try to get the technique down. So it works out pretty well. We make small weights about 1.5 inches to 2 inches in diameter. And
for those of you who are interested, you can probably go online and register for those classes. But also when they open up, I'm sure they're not there yet. But there's also on YouTube. I know there's a couple of good videos that the Corning has put out of your classes as well. And I encourage any of you to go and look for those on YouTube as well. Thank you, Vic. Thank you. I really appreciate you being here again today. So do we have any questions from the audience, Diane, or are we kind of?
Yeah, I've been collecting some questions. Let's unmute all of the presenters. I'm doing that now. Okay, so I kind of wrote them down in the order that everyone's spoken. So Gordon, could you tell us what's the most challenging subject that you make?
It's probably, it's anything where I'm applying scales. So snakes, lizards, and fish. And it's challenging for a couple different reasons. One is that I combine so many colors. I make my own canes. By the way, I work with, just so everyone knows, I work with mainly Italian and glass from China, but mostly Italian. And it's got a higher coefficient, which gives you some advantages, but some disadvantages. The advantages are the coefficient of expansion, which has been mentioned here, which is how the glass expands as it's heating and cooling, is very close to the clear crystal that we all use. So the chance of cracking is at a minimum. So I've chosen to make my color palette mainly those colors. The disadvantage of that is it's a much softer glass. And although it's easier to work with, the tough part is keeping your dimension and keeping the integrity of the motif that you've made when you drop the hot glass on top of it. So that creates a bit of a challenge as far as that goes. But as far as what makes the snakes and the fish and the salamanders challenging with scales is there's so many scales that are being applied to these different parts of the motif. It takes me so long to do it. And I'm focused on such a small area for such a long period of time. It's physically challenging, believe it or not, although you hardly see anything moving other than my fingertips. You have to lock yourself in, your eye focus. That's very challenging. And then in the case of, say, where I do a double compound paperweight, when I put it together, that challenge of working by myself and basically making a paperweight and a half and putting them all together by myself, it can be pretty tricky, lining things up the way you need to, having so much glass between the different parts of the design so that you get the right visual effect that you want and the placement of things. So that's pretty much, that's it for me.
Okay. Well, along the lines of challenging, I was personally going to ask Allison, how on earth were you able to hold a 10-inch in diameter piece of glass?
Oh, I have friends.
Oh, okay.
And the only reason that 10 inches was my maximum was that it's the size of the furnace. I work at a small studio with like 3 or 4 other people. That's the size of the furnace door. And he refused to make the furnace door any bigger because he said that I would just want more glass. That's as much as he could handle.
Oh, that's funny.
You know, all of us have gotten older, which is why paperweights being small has, you know, been a good direction for me, because that was a lot of physical challenges. Gordon admits. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this physically. It could take a lot out of you over the years, you know.
Yeah.
We're all a little beat up from that. Everybody walks a little sideways from carrying the pipe.
Well, I remember going to the Corning Museum for the 100th paperweight opening that Josh Simpson did, and the video of all the equipment that he ended up having to design to make something that heavy and that big. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, my studio was built mostly, my studio mates and I, we built everything in our studio. And so it's all sort of, you know, same, tailored towards what our goals were, what we wanted to accomplish.
Well, that's cool. You have people to collaborate with on that.
It's very important part of my process that I've been working with the same people in the same studio for 25 years.
Wow.
And I met them all at the same place we all came from the New York Experimental Glass Workshop and built this little place of our own together.
Interesting.
So there hasn't been that much turnover.
They'll never get rid of me. They'll never get rid of me.
Okay.
Allison, was that on Mulberry Street back when they were on Mulberry Street?
Well, one of my partners actually is the person who used to work at Mulberry Street, and when they moved to the larger facility in Brooklyn, the guy that moved everything.
Oh, okay, cool. Wow.
Now, along the same vein, I'm always struck by, it's not just like the physical act of having to put in the hours to build these things and to be able to manage the physical act of it, but it's also such a psychological game too. I'm always struck by how much loss there is. You know, you spend these hours of your life, these days of your life building something, and then I think a lot of people don't realize just how frequently something goes wrong at the last minute, and it's all for nothing. It's all for nothing. I was wondering if maybe some of you could talk about how you kind of overcome that psychology, the psychological game, you know, if you could.
Can't get attached to anything till it's out of
lizard weight. There's so much, there's like 800 scales, like Gordon was talking about. You have to be so focused, and as you're putting on all that detail, and then you're working towards the tail end, and maybe the face wants to crack or something. I mean, even just putting the lizard together was a huge challenge. And then once you finally finish that whole setup and all that dimension, and really, just like you said, in a split second, you can lose it. Yeah. And I've got boxes full of those lizard paperweights. It just didn't come out quite right. And those actually took me weeks and weeks to get over before I would try it again. Sometimes a month or two. It was really, really difficult. And then in fact, I remember just a couple of years ago, I had orders for about 3 years for lizard weights. So to get the energy back up again, to really start putting them together, it really can be difficult. It does take a lot of focus.
Yeah.
Ted, how about you? As you know, I mean, Victor talks about kind of like, I mean, I saw he was saying kind of like about solving the problems. It seems like that's kind of like what kind of motivates him. It's kind of like almost like a game for him. But what about you, Ted? Like what, you know, especially if somebody's new. I mean, I don't know. I don't know, how do you keep up the momentum and not get discouraged?
It's the curiosity, the doing something new, and well, with glass blowing, some people ask, you know, what made you interested in it? And I say, well, it's liquid fire on a stick. What 8-year-old boy doesn't understand that? And to a certain extent, that's true. But I certainly have a well-decorated garden with fractured and paperweights or broken stems and petals on the flower inside the paperweights, you know, all the ones that didn't come up to snuff. But I did learn working in the furnace. You know, you're working along, you got a piece on the end of the pipe, you turn around wrong, the pipe touches something, and bam, your piece is on the floor and hundreds of pieces. You just have to deal with that, and that's just part of the process. Although it's not easy all the time. Chris Bazzini told me that really the heartbreak of encasement is why he quit making paperweights. And I can understand that. It really is a tremendous investment in time and effort. And then sometimes it just is all for naught. But other folks here have more experience with that than I do.
Right, yeah.
You know, one thing you talk about I think there's something built into us. I'm not to assume, but I think there is something built into all of us that, like when Victor talks about, you know, when it goes wrong, I know for me, I get discouraged, but there's 10 times more of a challenge that presents for figuring it out. And you become obsessed with there's no way I'm going to not do this until I figure, you know, and it just kind of, it's built into us that, you know, it's like getting punched in the face. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to punch you back harder. It kind of, that's just, it's a response that you have. I've never done anything where it failed and I've gone, okay, forget that. I mean, I walk away going, okay, what happened and how can I figure it out?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that just, and I think that's what has us continue to move on. Because when we do that in our figuring out what happened from the last piece, we probably solve about 10 more problems that we would have had for the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And
you learn a lot more from your successes and failures than your successes.
Yeah. So
interesting. Well, thank you for those insights. I really appreciate it. Diane, do we have anything else from the audience?
Yeah, I've got a couple more questions. I have two for Mikhail.
Yes, sure.
Are you there? Yeah, there he is. Okay. Do you have any assistants working with you in your studio, or do you work alone?
I work totally alone. It's complicated for me because I need to pull all my cane alone, to make all my paperweight alone. It's a really complicated gymnastic, yes. Okay. I have a hole in my door just to put the pipe and just to go running. But it's it works, but
so if someone wants to come in and be your student, they have to find their way to Reunion.
Yes, I have one guy to learn approximately 7 years. He stayed with me to learn glass and all technique, but he have another job, a family, and it's complicated to join the twice job. And sometimes he come to help me, but I need to work all alone, and just sometimes just help me for just 1 week or two. But yes, it's not easy here because the school I built 10 years ago was closed now, because now we have 5 glass maker. We work on the torch on the island, and it's enough for the island because it's a really small market. And if I learn 2 more people, it's complicated after to have a good market. And
throws off the balance, yes.
It's really complicated.
Another question for you is, do you have natural gas on Reunion, or do you use another energy source?
Oh, yes, it's another problem because we have no propane here and no natural gas. I only work with butane gas. It's a little bit low calorific than propane, but it's complicated to my kiln. I need to add 4, 6, 7 bottles because we have no citern. I have just house bottle standard, and I need to add 7 bottles with all to work to my kiln. In series. It's complicated for high pressure to work. Sometime with the end of the day, I need to go to buy some more bottle to finish the day, and it's complicated. It's a really not easy to work on the island. I need to start the kiln just 1 week to concentrate the order and the freight of gas to have the kiln on just 1 week or 2 weeks to make all the order. And after that, I just start all my kiln and work on my torch. And after I reheat my kiln for 1 week and again. It's really complicated.
Wow. So I have a question for Damon. How is your day split between teaching and doing your own work?
Well, that's complicated too. Currently, well, typically I work in the morning in the glass studio. I'll work from 8 until 1. And then I pick up the kids from school, and then I teach night classes at college. And so that's how I'm able to, sort of balance it out and make it work. So it's just a lot of continuous going. Just got to get it done.
And a little bit of a treadmill, huh?
Yes, 8 days a week.
Okay. I have a question for, let me see. Oh, I have a comment from Gulsari. Make sure everybody saw this, that Mikhail and Ted's work is on the PCA Facebook page right now, if you want to see a few more pictures. I have a question for Victor. What's the most challenging part about your current work with the Blausa style flowers?
Good question.
Well, the biggest challenge was to try and make all those parts so thin, those leaves and the petals. And it finally figured out a way to to actually accomplish that. And I know I've been asked a lot of questions about it, but the Velasquez themselves were always very evasive. So I think at this point, I'm going to kind of protect what they initially did with their career. I've been to Corning, conservators there, and I've talked to Jenny Brown at the Velasquez, or at the Harvard Museum, and they both are quite aware of what I'm doing, and they've been very encouraging about the direction. I hope to continue to do more pieces with this and see how far I can go with it. They did an amazing amount of work. Anybody who's seen the collection, that was actually my first exposure when the first convention I went to was in Boston in the 70s, and that's when I first saw the work.
Wow.
This many years later, I finally started to work on it.
So have you been to the exhibit since they revamped it?
No, I haven't.
No. I was there before they fixed it up, so I'm excited to go back sometime soon. We have another question for you.
One quick question, Victor, is that all soft glass that you're working on? Is it soft glass, that those Blausa flowers that you're making? Those are soft glass, right?
Not necessarily.
Pardon?
Not necessarily. Okay.
Not necessarily. Okay.
Come on now, you saw that coming.
That's a fair question, I think, right?
He's not going to answer any of them.
Well, see if you'll answer this question, Victor. How many paperweights have you ever made? Have you made in your career so far?
At our peak, when both my sons and I were working together, we would make anywhere from 300 to 400 weights a year. So we did have a pretty good long time. Wow. So we've got a lot of weights out in the field. But now I work pretty much, I only make a handful of weights now a month because my son, John, I have him come over to help me in case. And so I'm still making setups, and I find that this pace is a little more enjoyable because I can just kind of make pieces that I think of and design and then just do it at a much more comfortable rate. I really, I think I had some calendars that my sons found, and every day on the calendar was filled that I worked. I worked like 6 to 7 days a week for over 30 years. So it was pretty tough schedule. So today it's a lot nicer schedule. I have my great grandson comes over 5 days a week, so he keeps us busy.
Are you teaching him glass?
Do I what?
Is he interested in glass, or is he too young still?
No, he's only 3 years old. He's a little too young.
So I have
the other artists care to answer that question? How many paperweights you've made? Anybody else want to say how many?
It's substantially less than what Victor said.
Less than Victor. Anybody made more than Victor?
It's probably the consensus.
Okay.
We have one question. How much, this is for all the artists, how much of an influence has classic French paperweights from the mid-1800s had on your paperweight subjects and techniques?
None.
Yeah, for me, it not so much on the subject or the techniques, with the exception of the Pantan paper.
Those are the ones that influenced us, right?
Yeah. But as far as I love Millefiori paperweights and antique Millefiori paperweights, although I mean, my work is so far from that. I love them. And I think there is an influence just in the fact that I look at them and they amaze me so much. And I have so many questions about color and all that whole process. I think somehow that does something in your head. So I think there is something there. I'm not sure how it all connects, but yeah.
Are there colors that you can't achieve now?
I think the 1800s boy, they came up with some colors that were just like, you can't find a gold ruby that is anything like the gold ruby of the 1800s, in my opinion.
You can't find gold ruby like you could get in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah. And some of their white, the white is so rich and dense, but it's also a problem because I've done antique repairs and fixing a lot of antique paperweights, and a lot of them, the cracks that were involved, white was involved in a lot of those cracks, which it found. So.
Yeah, you see that a lot in the cliche paperweights, in the stave baskets, the white. You get a lot of fractures in that.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one, on the French?
Red has always been a difficult color. I'm sure everybody will attest to that. It looks perfect before you encase it. Then after you encase it, it kind of goes maybe an orangey or a little brown, and
yeah,
so that's been quite a challenge to create that. I've been pretty happy with the red that I finally developed over a lot of years.
Yeah, you got red.
Raspberry, you can see it probably in that weight there.
Yeah,
that red is pretty bright.
Lovely.
Victor, do you mix your own color, or what color do you use?
It's just combinations of things and how you heat it up, and yeah, really, it's been quite of a challenge. I mean, I probably have test weights with red. I probably have hundreds of color combinations of reds and different things, and encased them, and then you can see that they didn't stay real bright. No, it can be frustrating, but just like Gordon said, there's something in us that we just won't take no for an answer. You just have to keep working at it.
Yeah.
I have one more question. It's for everybody. When you stack one piece on top of another for your final composition, do you use an adhesive or do you use hot glass?
It's all hot for me. Everything's hot.
Yeah.
No gluing.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
No glue here.
Glue.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, out. Yes.
All
always
hot.
out. Yes. We fuse glass. Yes.
And that
super.
take away.
You can't have anything else in there.
What did you say, Gordon?
I was going to say that's not meant to take away from the idea of laminating and using adhesives. There are some pieces that I've done plaque forms where I'll have my grinder and polisher laminate a color to the back, but that's the exception. But as far as putting the design together itself, it's all hot.
Mm-hmm. Victor, I have another question for you. Does red have gold as an ingredient? Your red?
Oh.
Well, there are some that do have gold in them, but I've actually that they're hitting around where I'm getting this color built. You can do it without the gold in it. That's about as far as I'm going to go with it.
Okay.
The other trick with color is that the different colors flow differently. Yellows and reds tend to be stiff. Whites and blues tend to be very soft.
Yeah.
And if you put the two of them side by side and then heat it up, one's going to move and the other one doesn't. And that can pose some interesting challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the same dealer, yes.
I have a question for Allison. Do you think the enamels that you use, if you're still using the same kind of enamels, are they chemically more hazardous than any of the glass?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what you're going to do with it. In general, they do contain lead. So yeah, if you're gonna eat a sandwich while you're working or what, I mean, ultimately I use them in very small amounts in a very controlled environment with, I have my own little snorkel up top to suck all the fumes away. And so most of the reasons behind their toxic scariness. I have a way around that. Okay. You know, they're not really that bad. They just, because people don't know how to behave, you can't let them have nice things. Do you know what I mean? They're originally a ceramic paint.
Okay.
They're made for ceramic glazes to begin with.
Allison, making any of your own?
Make my own paints? No,
Yeah.
I don't really have the capacity to do that. But I have been really, really lucky that other artists have been so generous. Now, everybody I know has bought these paints once and tried to use them and been like, oh, these are terrible. Because they're oil paints and they're very difficult to use. Mm-hmm. So they're laying around in the corners of studios all over North America. And every once in a while I run into somebody who goes, you know, I have some of those, and they gift them to me. So in that way, I still have a medium to work with.
Cool.
Is there a comparable product on the market? I mean, I know you said that company that you use the enamels for is no longer producing, but is there like another, you know, similar?
There are other companies that have, you know, tried to step up in their place. I have experimented kind of marginally with most of them, but these paints took me a really long time to figure out, you know, the trick with the red and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. So for me to switch to one of those other products is to begin again to learn all those things about that product instead.
Are there any troubles with like compatibility with those at all? Is that a non-issue for you?
It's a non-issue for me.
How about I mean, the actual color that you're putting on, is there like, does it flash difference once you actually bake it on, or are you just kind of aware of all that?
It's like any other kind of glass that you're going to heat it up. It's going to change colors depending on what happens as you heat it. And I have all kinds of like little tricks that I do to try to keep the colors the way that I want them. Like I always add a little bit of yellow to my red, and then the red stays. And if you don't do that, it goes brown. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, but it does. Just enough yellow that you don't even know it's there. I know it's there because otherwise it turns brown. There's just little things that we figure out over time.
Wow.
I was wondering if we could go through each of the artists and just kind of, can you tell us where you draw your inspiration from? Why don't we start with Damon?
I think that, you know, back to the question about balancing teaching with glass, you know, I teach a lot of art history, and I think it's constantly looking at what's been done and then trying to innovate within the field and make the work have your own personal taste and style. And, you know, a lot of times with all this experimentation and trial and error, it's just trying to move the medium, the paperweight into somewhere it hasn't been, you know. And so I think, you know, it's a lot of reflection, but also, you know, trying to figure out how our skill sets develop and what's possible now that wasn't possible 10 years ago, and what will be possible in 10 years from now.
Thank you. Ted, where are you drawing inspiration from?
Is that directed to me?
Yes, please.
I have to look at the paperweights of the past. That's my target, is to try to in some way match the creativity that was there. I will admit that I tend to view myself more as an artisan than as an artist, and the composition is the difficult part for me. I'm much better at understanding the technique than I am at creating the image that I will find pleasing.
Thank you.
Yes, it's not easy to melt different color. It's really difficult to choose the good color, the good ground, to not charge too much your Paperweight, to have the good collaboration with all the color. It's really difficult exercise. So sometimes I need to draw. In Réunion, it's really cool because I have a lot of culture here. We have Indian culture, Chinese culture, African culture. We have all of different feeling person, feeling hearts, and different kind of architecture. Yes, and I can learn the black, the red, the brown, yes, the yellow, the blue, and this when the Indian melt pink, yellow, blue, you have the really flashy color. It's really interesting to keep an eye on different culture. So Chinese use really a lot of gold. We have it's all different, and I take a lot of inspiration here. And of course, the nature in Réunion, it's tropical, it's exotic. We have a lot of endemic flower we have never see everywhere, and it's really good to work your inspiration to find the good color. If you melt white and pink, and after you have a little aspect on your kind, to have the good how do you say the good texture for the leaf or for the pistil. It's really complicated. It's a really hard exercise, yes, for me.
Thank you. Allison, where do you draw your inspiration from?
Oh, wow, that's a tricky question. I would have to say from everywhere. I try really hard not to, I want it to look different than anything you've ever seen. That's sort of my main goal. So I try not to be influenced too much by other people's artwork, because I want it to be really pure and come from only me, and have it be something new that you never saw before. I'm always just trying to find something that I've never seen before and make it something you could see.
Neat. Thank you. Victor, where would you say you draw most of your inspiration from?
With the paperweights, and even my sculptural work, is really nature. For me, it hasn't been, if you go way back in the history of glass, nature hasn't really been interpreted in glass. It's only recently that we can create such realistic pieces in glass. And it's not like we have to go through an abstract version like art has gone through. I think we're still developing realism. And for me, that's the most important. I like it to look realistic. I still use my own interpretation, but I still want people to look at it and say, wow, are those real? So that appeals to me.
Absolutely. Gordon?
Yeah, for me, and I think this goes back to the very beginning of paperweight making. For me, there were always two things that I wanted to have be strong influences. One was technical, but the technical part of it. So I looked at other paperweights, and I looked at what I thought were the best work being done by the Banfords, the Contis brothers, Tarsitanos, and Paul Stankard. And I saw that as a gauge as to technically, that's how you got to shoot for that. You got to be, you want to be that sound in your execution. And beyond that, so I kind of locked that in from the beginning. And I think some also came from my family, my father being a precision machinist. There was this level of quality that was kind of built into the way I thought. so having that put aside, to me, it was a lot like what Michael said, and Allison and even Victor, just the natural environment. No matter where I am, I can be anywhere and look down at the ground or just whatever I'm seeing. Somehow there's an influence there, and I see an idea or a design or part of,
sure,
part of one, something like that. So and then your mind starts to just go and go and go and go. I learned to scuba dive. I felt that putting yourself in the environment of an idea that you had always was helpful. In the 1980s, I went and looked at a lot of flowers and a lot of orchids and I went and found the things that I wanted to do. I'd walk into an apple orchard and sit there and take pictures of the apple tree, the branches and all that. Then I learned to scuba dive. So it gave me a strong influence of a marine environment, being up close, being underwater at 30 or 40 feet, and be face to face with a coral reef and what goes on there. So that that's how I approach.
Has moving cross country changed your inspirations, Gordon?
I think it has, and it's not. I think it just happens too. Wherever you are, whatever your environment is, that just starts to seep into your psyche and your subconscious, and it becomes part of what you're doing. It just does. So, but I do try to spread things out. But I cover a lot of territory motif wise. But there's no question. I think that the environment it has some impact.
Sure. And did we get any other questions come in? Any more questions come in from the audience? Looks like she might be frozen. I do have, perhaps if we don't have anything else from the audience, I do have maybe one more. It looks like we might have lost Diane. I have perhaps one more question that I would like to go through all, and then we can bring it. We can start to bring it to a close here. So the last thing I would like to ask is, what kind of tips do you have for up and coming artists who might be interested in this art and collectors? And I think let's go ahead and start with Victor on this one, please.
Well, the only tip I would say is, I mean, you have to have a really strong desire to make these. If somebody can kind of talk you out of it, you certainly aren't going to be able to make them. And but you should really, I see a lot of people when they start to try to make them too big. I mean, I would start very small, and that's what I do in my class. I start out with like a 1-inch weight and just try to work out the process of actually encasing something and trying to keep it, crisp and without distortion. But, technically, technique has always been super important for me too, is that I wanted to make the weights as clean and as technically perfect as I could do it. And that's always come first, to the point where I don't want it to be evident. I want it to look like that's just the way it should be. I don't want it to look like I'm struggling to make the paperweight. And I also, when I make a setup, I want it to actually look exactly the same after it's encased, rather than having it distorted. I remember when I first started, I would make a setup and I'd bring it to my wife and show it to Beverly and say, take a look at the setup before I ruin it. Because, it was so difficult to get it. So at this point now that I can actually create it the way, make a setup and have it look the same after it's encased, to me is finally, full circle. And that's where I want it to be. And like I said, I don't want it to look like there's any effort. I want it to look just the way it should be.
What would you say to our newer collectors, or even our seasoned collectors, what to look for, and or perhaps how they should approach the art?
Well, I mean, they should just look for something just that does appeal to them. And you do want to see it being, you know, technically put together correctly. And but I don't want to point out too many things like, you know, every little seed or bubble or something. It's no way, because you just, I remember saying that you can get to like about 95% perfect, and it's that last 5% that really makes it almost impossible. So you can hit a certain standard, but they're never 100% perfect. I mean, I've never made a weight that I said there's not a single flaw in it, but you have to hit a level that you will accept and won't accept. I mean, I have boxes full of things that I've had other people look at and go, what's wrong with this? Well, I know what's wrong with it. So I won't put it out, you know? So sometimes that corners you a little bit too, but that's part of the process. It is difficult to lose that much work in a split second. There's no question about it, but there is something innate in us that we just keep doing it, some crazy reason.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Allison, what kind of tips and what kind of recommendations or tips do you have for artists and collectors?
Did you want that speech from my dad about the world economy and how this will never work for you? Or did you want something a little bit more inspirational?
A little bit more inspirational.
I don't know. I mean, I have to agree with Victor that, you know, to work with glass is a dedication that a lot of people are gonna find to be a challenge. And that if you really, 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 really want to do it, go ahead. But if you don't, then play around with it. It can be a fun sport. It really can be. And there's lots of cool things that you can make that don't have to be amazing or 95% or whatever. You could just still enjoy expressing yourself creatively, blah, 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 blah. You know, for those 1% of us who feel like we have to do that 95%, there's no talking you out of it anyway. So I don't really have much advice. You're either going to do it or you're not. Go for it. You'll find out.
Sure. I appreciate that. Mikhail, what kind of kernels of wisdom can you leave us with?
It's like, yes, Victor, it's always a problem to be satisfied and unsatisfied. When I open the can, I always see a problem, but it's good, it's not good. I never know when it's where is the limit, and I think it's a big part of every glass blower, glass maker that always unsatisfied to his job, but it's for that to keep every time up the level of a good technique, a really good realistic piece, and just keep on this focus line to always make better work. But it's not easy. It's so long years work, long hour of works behind kiln, behind torch, and sometimes go to run and scream but it's the game. It's
Sure.
the game.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Damon, what would you, I mean, you work with kind of students all the time, right? I mean, what kind of inspiration do you try to impart on them?
Oh, I feel like those are self-pep talks to keep coming back. I think everybody has something to say. I think it's just sometimes getting folks pushed in the right direction. I think that, you know, there is a fascination with the material that I think propels most of us forward. As far as, you know, the collectors and all that, I think, you know, seek out what you enjoy, you know, first and foremost. You know, I think a lot of us get caught in trends and thinking about what's a good investment and things like that. But I think really what catches your eye, you know, some of my favorite pieces of, you know, wouldn't necessarily ever qualify as like valuable or, you know, refined, but there are elements that I enjoy about them. And so sometimes it's just looking at parts instead of the whole.
Absolutely. We did have a question come in for you. How is your cold work friend?
How is Andrew? Andrew is good. He's chugging along. He's doing well.
Good. And yeah, are you handling all your own code work now, or?
I am. I'm doing all of it now, and it's love-hate.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a lot of work all the way around.
Yeah. Let's
go to Ted. What kind of kernels of inspiration can you leave us with? And again, I'm excited to hear from what you have to say.
Well, I was a collector for a long time before I was a maker.
Mm-hmm.
I follow a number of the social media groups for paperweights, and I just see way too many people focused on what's this worth. It's like, it doesn't matter what it's worth. It's a combination of, do you like it, and can you afford it? And you shouldn't bankrupt your kid's college fund to buy the top end paperweight at the gallery. And if you find something at the dime store that's pretty that you really appreciate somehow, then take it home. There are folks like you, Eric, who are dealers. Well, then it makes sense to pay attention to the price, because that's a business. But collecting isn't a business, and if you're trying to create a financial legacy for your family by collecting, well, good luck. But if you're wanting to create an environment and have objects in your home that make you happy and that you love to be surrounded by, well, then this is one place you can do that. And what they've said about the makers, I mean, you just have to be kind of pig-headedly stubborn to fight through the early transition stages. You have to make a lot of bad glass before you can make any good glass. That's just what it comes down to.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And Gordon, what can you?
Yeah. In terms of advice for somebody who wants to get involved in paperweight making, first and foremost, do not think about making something because you can sell it. Leave the money out of it.
Right.
Just forget it. And I mean, I'm not going to be nice about it. Forget it. Just forget the money. Learn how to do something. Learn how to do something really well, something simple, whatever it might be, a flower, a fruit, whatever you choose to be, what you want to do, learn how to do it, and learn how to do it 50 times really well before you go to the next idea. I'm trying to find a way to speak to a large audience of young glass people that I witnessed these days, that they don't refine anything and they keep moving on. And I think it's a mistake. You want to be really good at what you do, not to sound technical, but my background is that, and it's been successful for me. And I think if it's been successful for me, I think it can be for anybody. I learned how to make laboratory glass first. And I always tell people, go to Salem County College. If you want to be a paperweight maker or not, go there, learn laboratory glass blowing, and then get a job in a factory like I did, where I was given a box of glass and they said, you need to make 1,000 of these things and you have to do it in the next 2 weeks. And I sat and I did something over and over and over again for 8 hours a day. And when I was done, I really knew how to do something. And I think that carried over into the paperweight world. incredibly well. I haven't made some scientific glass for 40 years. And if somebody handed me a box tomorrow and said, make this apparatus that you did in 1982, I'm sure I could do it well. And I say that humbly, but I really believe that. And it's because of that foundation. So I would say that to anybody who's getting into the field is, don't be thinking of 50 million different things, refine one thing, move on, and really, really elevate the work to the highest level possible, because it's going to be the best thing you could do for yourself. And it's the best thing you can do for the collectors. Now, in terms of the collectors, not everything's a great paperweight. Everybody's doing the best they can, but not everything you look at is with the greatest paperweights being made. You can't compare it with that and say it's a great paperweight. I know beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but let's be real here. You know, be discerning and look with a technical eye at what you're, and work within your price point, and really, really think about what you're going to buy, and buy what you think's beautiful, but also try to like seek out the finest work that you think is out there, because that it's only going to be better in the big picture for you and everyone else.
Absolutely. I had one question come in for you as we were chatting here. Do you, one of the members wants to know, do you do customized paperweights? Like for individuals? Yeah, custom order paperweights, it seems.
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on what. No, I mean, if somebody asked me somebody once was in the towing business and they wanted a tow truck, you know, not good. Yeah, but yeah, I do. I don't have a problem with that. Sometimes I enjoy when somebody gives me the idea. You know, I don't always want to be the one to have to come up with the idea. So it's nice.
Yeah, I think that most of the artists here are open to working, you know, on a common inspiration with collectors, and they're willing and open to ideas.
Oh, yes.
By the way, these are all registered artists with the Paperweight Collectors Association, and their contact information, as well as the rest of the artists that were showcased in today's contemporary showcase, their contact information can all be found online at www.paperweight.org. And most of us here, I think all of the artists here have a website, and certainly email and phone contact information there. And so if there's any time that you're looking for a particular work, go ahead and just give them a ring. I'm sure that they are more than happy to help you out. Without further ado, unless there's other questions that we have coming in, do we have anything else right now? Any other questions come in, Diane?
No, nothing else has come in.
Okay, well, you know, again, I want to thank everybody that showed up today, our audience and our panel of artists. You know, I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun, and I look forward to meeting with you guys and seeing you guys all soon. And thank you so much. Thank you.
And thank you for John for putting together the showcase.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, John.
Video.
Yeah, thank you everyone for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
See you all. Diane, Gordon, Ted.
Thank you very much.
And Michael.
Yeah, it looks like I think that
you all are here.
I think Damon took off early, but I'm sure he's appreciative as well. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a beautiful day. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.